Thank you very much, Todd. My name, as you mentioned, is Aaron Emmel, and this is an excerpt from the story, Harnessing the Sun. The Naren delegation, representatives of Liha's own species, had been seated with their backs to the window that overlooked their ruined world, so they stared their hatred into Liha as they ate. The desert behind them was an empty seafloor, scattered with leaning ships and the bones of the leviathans that had recently ruled the deep. Some of the marooned craft were warships, but there were also trawlers and freighters and yachts and cruise ships, all of the latter newly outfitted with cannons and other weaponry, none of which had stopped the water from vanishing beneath their keels. Sure. So, Liha's people, the Naren, have been conquered by invaders called the Truan. And now Liha works for the invaders. She's a collaborator, although she doesn't see herself that way. And she's meeting with the representatives of her people who are in hiding to try to convince them to give themselves up. She thinks this is the only way for their species to survive. And of course, her own people despise her for this. Well, for a short story, you only have room for a few details. So to create an immersive world, all of the details have to reinforce each other. And you also want to make things as personal as possible for the main character. So one entry point I had for these cultures was food. Food is very visceral. It's something that we can all relate to, but it's also very personal. Food is central to people's cultures. It's necessary for survival, but it also builds community and tells you a bit about the economy. It can also expose a history of conflicts between cultures. So, for example, in real life, a lot of popular foods used to be the rejects or leftovers of the group in power. The people who don't have power learn how to use the leftovers, and in the end, they become a beloved part of their communities. In the United States, two really popular foods started off that way, such as chitlins in the South and also lobster, which used to be a food for poor people in the Northeast. So for this story, I used a particular invented dish, coarse shell soup, as a representation of all the conflicts in this story. The character is longing for her lost childhood home, but also conflicts about social position and power. And I demonstrated the stakes by having this particular dish be the last coarse shell soup in the world. And the rest of the story was built around this idea. So Liha loved the soup, but she couldn't have it anymore because the invaders had removed the world's oceans. And to show why that conflict was important, since I only had room for a few details about these alien species, most of the details I shared about the Naren's culture was about the relationship with the ocean that they had lost. So that was the basis of their livelihoods, and even their names described the relationship to the sea and to other bodies of water. Since I represented that group in terms of the relationship to nature, I highlighted the aspects of the invaders' culture that sought to dominate and even to destroy nature. And finally, I had to look at the physical representation of the aliens. To keep the number of details and new concepts for the reader low, I made the aliens mostly humanoid, with just a few distinctions to show that they were physically different from each other. And I based these distinctions mostly on exaggerated real-life human or animal traits. I tried to be more efficient by having those details be things that could demonstrate the character's emotional reactions. So, for example, one line from the story is, Liha felt her own stipples rise and her skin harden, ready for battle. Well, the fun thing about writing about aliens is that you can create anything you want. The sky's the limit, literally. For me, it's all about consistency. You can put in any detail of alien life you want to tell the world, but each one of those details constrains you in the future. Each one of those details tells you something about the world, the ecology, the economy, the history. And this is fun because it helps you build and expand the world, but it also means that all of those details have to be consistent and build off of each other. Sure. So there are a lot of things about alien cultures that fascinate me. One is thinking about how life might evolve differently and in ways we might not even recognize in different environments. And of course, how that life might develop intelligence and how intelligible that intelligence might be to ours. One of the stories I love that explores that is Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang, the story that Arrival, the movie, is based on. He shows what it might be like to live in the same universe as another species, but to come to entirely different conclusions about how the universe works. And this is kind of cheating because they're not aliens, but what N.K. Jemisin does with the Origins and the Broken Earth trilogy is everything I want from my aliens. They have their own unique relationship with the planet, and their culture is built on that relationship and their conflicts with the rest of humanity. Well, I love Star Wars and Star Trek, both equally and differently, but in both universes, each alien race basically represents one culture with one defining trait. And those stories are incredible. There are really compelling storytelling reasons for doing that. But I think that even within those universes, once the culture started to get more interesting, once writers started to do stories about what diversity and different dynamics might look like within those cultures. And to just give one example, last night I watched the newly released second episode of the Boba Fett series on Disney Plus. And before, the Tusken Raiders had been shown as very one-dimensional, having really one trait, which was raiding. And this new show really delves into different aspects of their culture, which I think makes them much more interesting. Sure, thanks. I have a lot of new stories coming out this year that I'm really excited about. One of the stories I have coming out this year is in a magazine called Fireside Magazine, and it is about humans who terraform a world by transforming their consciousnesses into different types of robotic and robotic creatures. So I'm very excited about that.